Welcome to Media Makers Spotlight from Women in Film and Video in Washington, D.C. We bring you conversations with industry professionals for behind the screens, insight, and inspiration.
Welcome to Media Maker Spotlight. I'm your host, Sandra Abrams, and in this episode, we'll be chatting with Chaz Ebert. She has a wonderful book that I highly recommend. The title is It's Time to Give a FECK, Elevating Humanity Through Forgiveness, Empathy, Compassion, and Kindness. Chaz Ebert is an active producer of television and movies and the CEO of Ebert Digital LLC, publisher of the preeminent movie review site, RogerEbert.com. She's also the legal advisor and TV and movie producer at Ebert Productions. For 24 years, she shared a life with Pulitzer-prize winner Roger Ebert until his transition in 2013. In their work to foster empathy through cinema around the globe, they established the Ebertfest Film Festival and the Roger Ebert Center for Film Studies at the University of Illinois. Chaz has passionately continued to lead all established events while endeavoring to nurture the next generation of film writers, critics, and filmmakers through the Roger Ebert Fellowship, launched in 2014 by the Sundance Institute founder, Robert Redford. She also continues to award the Golden Thumb and Ebert Humanitarian Awards at Ebertfest and at the Toronto and Chicago International Film Festivals to filmmakers who exhibit unusually compassionate views of the world. Her civic passions include programs to help break the glass ceiling for women and people of color and to provide education and arts for women, children, and families. She's also the founder of #Day4Empathy. Now, about the book. All right, let me just show this book for everybody. Love this bright yellow cover with the pink. And you're wearing pink, so it's very appropriate. All right, since Roger's passing, it's been Chaz Ebert's desire for things such as forgiveness, empathy, compassion, and kindness, which she calls the FECK principles, to spread in such a viral way that they become a natural part of our lives as a next step to the work Chaz and Roger began together. Welcome to Media Maker Spotlight, Chaz Ebert.
Thank you, Sandra. I'm really happy to be here with you today to talk about the FECK principles. Yeah.
Well, you have many more accomplishments that I didn't mention, but I wanted to get to the book and talk about your body of work. This book, it came together through the work that you were doing with your husband, Roger. Can you talk a little bit more about that work?
Yes. In fact, you mentioned also the Day for Empathy, which we celebrated just recently, April 4th, which is the day that Roger made his transition. And we started in the FECK principles, the E is empathy or Ebert, because he always said that movies are a machine that generates empathy, that allows us to stand in the shoes of another person, a person who's different than us, a person of a different race or age or gender or political persuasion or socioeconomic class, and to gain a better understanding of that person. And to me, empathy is so important. When I was writing this book, sometimes I ask myself, why am I writing this book? These things are kind of obvious. And then after our most recent election, I learned they're not that obvious, that some things like empathy are considered a bad word almost today, just like they say DEI, a bad word. What's so bad about diversity? What's so bad about, we live in a diverse society, what's so bad about equity or equality and inclusion? Why are those considered bad words? And so I realized that talking about things like compassion or kindness or forgiveness are more important today than ever. And these were things that Roger found in watching movies. When you read his reviews, And we put 13 of his reviews on our website for our Day for Empathy. You're reading it and you find out that one of the things he loved about cinema and writing is it brought you closer to other people. And really, that's what I'm all about. I'm really about bringing people together.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I did think that, this was the time, especially when you were talking about now and on page 62, and you have bolded out, freeing ourselves of anger and anger towards another person allows us to begin to let the light in. And I just thought, yes, that's so obvious. But at the same time, people may not really be thinking of it because of what, especially what's going on now.
Yes. I think this is funny. So after the election, and I have friends of all stripes, all political persuasions, but I was really kind of in mourning, and I took a day of mourning. I actually suspended some of my business activities, and I said, let me just sit down and think about what this all means. Let me also think about how do I want to show up in the world at this time. And one of my friends suggested, well, I have a good suggestion for you. Pick up your own book. Read about giving a FECK and elevating humanity through forgiveness and empathy and compassion and kindness. And so I did. I picked up my book to reread it, and it actually calmed me down, and it said, yeah, there is a place for all of this in the world. I don't know what we're going to have to go through now, but more than ever, I want people to know that it is okay, not only okay, but this is a society. We all banded together in a society to help make each other better. And it's okay to talk about things like that.
Well, I also noticed on the jacket cover, you have amazing people, making comments on it. And one person is Jesse Jackson. Yes. So I bring up Reverend Jackson because in a previous life, I was a TV producer at CNN Financial News in New York. They had sent me out to escort him in, and I met him and was able to spend a little small amount of time and just found him gracious and kind. He only had one other person, because somebody said, well, he may have an entourage with him. Not at all. No, just a very humble person. And then I saw that he had written, a note there on the back, and I was like, wow, that's just, reading through the book and then, realizing he had, contributed in that way. I said, oh, that makes perfect sense from the person I remember meeting.
Yeah. And, I saw him about 2 weeks ago, and he has Parkinson's now. And so it's a little more difficult for him to get around, but he's still out there fighting the good fight. He's still advocating for things, and he's still, doing what he can do to make things better. And he says too, excuse me, get a little choked up, that we cannot stop, that we must continue. So I'm sorry. I mean, yeah.
No, it's quite understandable. I definitely understand. One of the things I also thought was you gave tips to people and you had exercises in the book as well. So it wasn't just you're reading a book, but write this down, ask yourself this question. And I said, oh, this is really very timely. This is exactly what we need for now. And to do these exercises, it gives you that sense of reflection and self-work that some people say, yeah, I'll get to it,
I'll get to it, and we don't, right? Mm-hmm. So I have to admit that the reason I wanted to do the exercises, but I wanted to include them, in a separate workbook, only because as a kid, I used to say, books are my friends. And I did not like people writing in books. And so that's a habit that is hard to break. And I know, but the publisher said, no, people love writing in books. And if you put it in a separate book, they may not do it, or they may not want to do it. And I'm surprised how many people come up to me and tell me one of the more valuable things in the book was the exercises, that they would do them right away. And if I didn't have them in there, they didn't know if they would take the time to go back to do them. So,
as an author, what is your writing style, or do you have any tips for other people who may be listening or watching this podcast, as far as getting it done, and sitting down and actually doing the writing? Because that's part of it. Everybody says, oh, I have a book in me, but they don't always sit down and write.
Takes a lot of discipline, yes. Besides discipline for writing, do it every day. That's the biggest tip. Even if it's 10 minutes, sometimes people say set aside an hour a day. Sometimes people may not want to do an hour. And yet, if you at least go in to do 10 minutes, you might do more. Sometimes you'll go in and do 10 minutes and you'll do 2 hours. So consistency is a key. And always, always, no matter where you are, carry either paper or a pen everywhere. Guys can do it, put in their jacket pockets or some carry a backpack. Women put it in our purses. I always have something to write with. Now with your phone, you don't have to even do it on on a writing surface. You can do it right on your phone or on a computer. Sometimes an idea comes to us, and if you don't write it down at that moment, you may lose it forever.
Right. Yes, that's so true. And you go, wait a minute, What was I thinking? It was really good. You're right. Mm-hmm. That's so true.
And the other thing that I do, now some people, Roger used to say that he liked writing at a certain time, like maybe in the morning rather than at night. At night, he was tired, he wanted to go to bed. I used to write in the morning, and now I kind of like to write at night. But finding a time that you think where you're going to do it more consistently is probably also a key.
I had not heard that one, and that's good. I like that suggestion. Thank you. I wanted to ask about your directorial debut last year with your film, if you don't mind. Yes. I know we're talking about the book, but I just want to switch and, The Wellness Warrior and this film. Yes. I've read about it and I was like, wow, it's about the life. She's now 102 years old, Deborah Szekley. She's the founder of Mexico's revered spa, Rancho La Puerta.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also the Golden Door.
Oh, and the Golden Door. Okay.
Yes, in Escondido, California. And she invited me to her birthday party for her 103rd year. So she's still going strong. Yeah. I adore Deborah Szekley. It's not that I set out to be a director, but so many women talked about having a movie made about Deborah's life because she was amazing. I mean, she started when she was like 17 or 18 years old. And when she was younger, her family moved to Fiji. When she met her husband, the professor, she got married very young, like 17 or 18 years old. They moved to Tecate, Mexico, and because her husband was from Hungary. And I think after the war, I think there were certain countries that were not being given visas. So they moved to Mexico to start Rancho La Puerta. And she did so many things that she just took for granted because she didn't go to college, but she got, like an education through life. She set up this health spa. And then in 1970, they set up the Golden Door in Escondido, California. All of these things, but she was working with people like Aldous Huxley, who went and wrote some of his
Brave
books
New
there.
World. He wrote Brave New World.
Yes. And there were so many other writers who loved going to the spa. At that time, they just pitched a tent and they charged something like $17.50 a week, but you had to help with the gardening and you had to help everything. Now it's a luxury spa.
Yes.
On acres of land in Tecate, Mexico, and also a luxury spa in Escondido, California. But over all of these years, Deborah did so many things. She said she would look around to see what is a problem that needs to be responded to, needs to be solved. And she'd just go. And at one time when she was 60 years old, she decided to run for Congress. So she left the spa in the hands of her daughter and son to run. She went to Washington ran for Congress. She didn't win, but when she was there, she said, if I had won, how would I, what's the pamphlet or the booklet I would use to tell me how to set up my office, how to communicate with my constituents, how I can be the most effective congressperson I can be. And they said, there is nothing like that. She said, what? So she pulled people together and she wrote a book that is used to this day, that every person in Congress gets a copy of the book that was started by her.
I mean, she's just sounds like an original. And, and I just thought you premiered the movie in October in Chicago, your hometown. Well, I just thought you walked the red carpet. That just must have been such a, wow, I can't believe it moment.
Well, the wow, I can't believe it moment is because Deborah was there. For some reason, people didn't, because she was 102, they didn't even know whether she was still around. And so when she appeared, the audience went wild because they didn't, I don't know why. I think I put it in the invitation that she would be there, but they thought, well, 102, maybe she won't come. But she came and she was vibrant and just, I just adore her. She also does things like she started a school for deaf children, the people who worked at Rancho La Puerta. And so many things that she did that I just adore her. So I could talk on and on, but this is the thing that I like. I have a certain adoration for our elders. And I think that sometimes we don't listen enough to people who have wisdom like that, or people who have compassion for other people, or people who want to be kind to other people. Sometimes we dismiss those things as being too soft, and they are not. They are the glue that holds our society together.
But we also read that your daughter, Sonia, encouraged you to make this film. Because I thought, you've been around film. Yes, this was a leap of faith for you. But, how was she able to convince you to make this your directorial debut?
Well, my daughter, Sonia, a couple of times she was at the spa with me, and I was talking to women in film or television who actually had positions where they could greenlight movies. And I didn't have that kind of position at a studio. And so when I would see them again and they would say, we're going to make a movie about Deborah. And we would see them and I said, did you start them? And they would say, we want you to help us. I said, okay, I'm willing to help. And I would see them, did you start the project? I'm willing to help. No, we didn't. And after 2 or 3 times of this, Sonia said, Mom, you always told us, if you want to get something done, do it yourself. You can do it. I said, no, I can't. I don't have the position. She said, you've been around film. You know how to do it. You can do it. You can produce it. You can direct it. And so I said, okay. And I'm glad that she did, because otherwise I wouldn't have done it. Sometimes we underestimate ourselves, Sandra. Do you think that?
Yes. We other people see it in us and we go, oh, no, I don't have that. Absolutely. No, that's so true. No, definitely. Well, what is next for Wellness Warrior? Is it going to be going on the streaming service? Can you share any information about what's next for it, since it's debuted in October of last year?
So the Wellness Warrior really was, I would say, more labor of love for me. But a distributor who I guess saw it when we showed it in Chicago reached out and asked if it could be distributed. Right now, it's a short. It's less than an hour. I have more footage I can put in. I wanted to have at least that version ready for Deborah's 102nd birthday last year.
Absolutely.
So I'm thinking maybe I want to add a little more to it and make it a little longer before I do more things with it. But I absolutely love the idea of having more people learn about the amazing Deborah Szekley.
Oh, it sounds like it. Well, prior to your directorial debut, you were executive producer in some films, and I read that you were the executive producer, Rebecca Hall's 2021 film "Passing." I saw the film. Yes. I loved it. I just was, too. It stars Tessa Thompson, Ruth Nega. As I said, I thought it. How did that come about? And then I guess also, how do you decide which films to be champion of?
So I don't know if it was that particular film or another one, but I was on an organization that's part of Sundance. It was called the Catalyst Forum. And what the Catalyst Forum does is they invite 6 documentary filmmakers and 6 narrative filmmakers, and then they invite a group of what they call creative investors, philanthropists, or people who can afford to maybe help contribute toward a film. And they put us all together at the Sundance Institute for 3 days.
Wow.
And we talk, and the filmmakers pitch their films, and you get to work with them and, eat dinner, talk about, and really,
a real deep dive.
Really take a deep dive into each film to see whether you're going to say yay or nay. And I think Passing may have been one of those films. I could be getting it wrong because there were some films that I helped through Sundance, and some films independently other ways. But I think Passing may have come through Sundance, and Rebecca Hall, and just the whole idea of Passing, because a lot of people did not know about what was called passing in the Black community when someone was Black but they passed for white in society at a time when they were either very fair skinned or if they could, because it would be easier, they would have more educational opportunities, business opportunities. They wouldn't be discriminated against because of the color of their skin or their cultural background, and they were able to just have a more robust economic life. So that was like a dirty little secret that we used to whisper about, if you knew someone who passed for white. And so the whole idea of passing was something that I knew about, and had some people in the family who had also passed that we would see only during certain times. Maybe you go to their house at night or something. I mean, it's really, really very strange now to think about something like that. Although I don't know, with the way the world is going right now, you may find more people doing that again. I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to get distracted.
You're also involved in some other films. What's the status of The Empire of Ebony? I think that's in post-production, but is there anything more you can tell us about that?
No, and I need to find out more about that, because that's one I very much, I love. Lyndon Johnson Rice is the daughter of the founder of Ebony. Mm-hmm. And I adored her parents, Miss John and Eunice Johnson, and I adore Linda. And Ebony magazine, when I was a kid, every house in the Black community had probably an Ebony magazine or Jet, the small magazine that they published. And so there were so many things that you could, aspiration, your dreams, looking at some of the Black movie stars or some of the things, some of the civil rights icons who were featured in Ebony or Jet magazine. And so it was something that when I was approached and asked to be part of that project, I said yes, no hesitation. And now I think it got stalled a little bit, but I need to find out. So I wish I knew, but I will find out, because that's going to be a very important movie, I think.
That's wonderful. No, keep us up to date when you can. I know we're recording this a few weeks before the Ebertfest. Your opening night film is the new 70 millimeter version of The Searchers, which, for people who are not fans of Turner Classic like me, it's the 1956 epic American Western directed by John Ford, starring John Wayne as Ethan Edwards. He's returning home to Texas after the Civil War. So what was it? Was it, because they have this new restored print, why this particular film to be the opening night for this year's Ebertfest?
Okay, that's a question I almost don't want to answer, only because there was a little controversy about that
Oh,
being our opening night film. Because
hmm.
there are some people who, didn't want to have a John Wayne film. There were some people who thought that, maybe some of the language and, it's a film of its time. So there's some
Hmm.
maybe racism.
Right, because it is coming after the Civil War. This, the
Yes.
main character, right? Hmm.
But I said, yes, and yes, and yes, and we need to talk about things. We can't just outlaw things in society without talking about them. Then we don't change things or we don't understand the other person. How can you develop empathy for someone that you never talk about or never try to figure out what makes them tick? And I think having a robust conversation after our films is something good. Plus, I bet it will be gorgeous. We have our film festival in the Virginia Theater in Champaign, Illinois. We have a huge screen. We have our projectionist's name is James Bond. That's his real name.
That's his real name.
Yes.
Oh,
And
I
and
love that piece of trivia there. That's
yeah.
fantastic. That's
And James
wonderful.
Bond is a great projectionist. And it's a newly restored version, just like you say, 70 millimeter. We're one of the few theaters around the country that can switch from 70 millimeter to 35 millimeter to
Oh, wow.
digital projection. And
Right.
that's
Hmm.
because my late husband insisted that they not take all of those old projectors and systems out. And
Hmm.
so now
That
I'm
was just
really
so
looking forward
smart.
to it.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be a great opening night.
Well, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the Ebertfest topic. Some of the selections are often made from lists of films that Roger has reviewed. Then there's newer topics or films that you and the film festival director, Nate
Yes, Nate
Cohen,
Cohen.
Cohen,
Hmm.
okay. So I wanted to ask you what makes for a good film selection for the festival? And what's it like to choose films after working with Roger, now to work alongside Nate?
So we started the Ebertfest Film Festival 26 years ago.
Wow.
And so Nate Cohen is a professor at the University of Georgia in Athens, but he was born, his hometown was Champaign, Urbana, Illinois, where Roger went to school and where Roger was born as well. So when we first started the film festival, me, Roger, and Nate used to all get together to talk about the films, along with people from some of the professors from the University of Illinois. And when Roger passed away, Nate and I continued the festival, and now it's in its 26th year.
So you already had that relationship. Right. So
Yes,
he knows what you're thinking. He knows how Roger thought of things. So you have that
yes,
wonderful historic context there. Hmm.
yes. And also, Nate teaches film as well, and I also just have a background in film by life, not by I didn't go to film school, but I know a lot about him just by being the wife of Roger Ebert, and anyway, talking about film all the time and living and breathing film. And we thought that the festival at first I thought about maybe not doing the festival anymore, but you know, Roger actually would write and say he hoped that the festival would continue. And I know that and sometimes when I'm there, I can actually feel his presence. And I'm really glad. I know he's happy. He would be happy that the festival is going on. But I love it too. And the audience, we get people who come in from Champaign and Urbana, but people who fly in from all over for the film
Wow.
festival.
That's
And
fantastic.
we're going to have this Susan Seidelman with Desperately Seeking Susan, and Rosanna Arquette is coming. We're going to close with The Hangover, which is a crazy
Those are
film.
hilarious. Right. Hmm.
Yeah. And we have a film from an Icelandic director called Touch, which is really wonderful. And I mean, there are just so many films. We usually end up showing about 12 or 13 films over a period of 3 or 4 days.
It sounds like it's going to be a wonderful event. I know you mentioned that you did not go to film school, but you have your law degree from DePaul
Yes.
University School of Law. You had this
Yes.
amazing civil rights career, and you also worked as a litigator before meeting Roger. So
Yes.
now you're doing all this film stuff. What has that been like for you, to all of a sudden, you thought, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer. And now, you're heading up the Ebert Festival and directing films.
I think I've always been, even when I was in kindergarten, I think I was a multitasker. And so I think I was born with the personality of a producer as well. And I can always do, I can juggle more balls, just throw one in and I'll keep doing them. I actually like having a broad range of interest. And so I like being able to do things in sort of varied fields. There are things that can complement each other. So I actually love being able to write a book and then do a movie and then go and do some philanthropic work where I'm helping a food pantry or, just doing a lot of different things.
I came reacquainted with you thanks to our producer, Brandon, but he had met up with, I think it was Matt Singer. He had written the book Opposable Thumbs,
yes.
which was this book right here.
Yes.
So then we were talking and we just thought, oh, it would be great if we could speak to Chaz Ebert and, what is she doing? And it was like, look at all this. We were going through your bio and it's like, and she's doing this, and she's doing this, and this, and this, I just thought it was.
Matt Singer, when we were doing our television show, I brought Matt Singer in and just adored him because he is smart and he's a good person with people. He's kind and he's compassionate. And I saw that only grow when he got married and had a daughter and a family. And when he wrote his book and he was coming around, we got back together when he came to Chicago. And it just reminded me the world is better having people like Matt Singer in it.
We had spoken to him and it was like, okay, now we definitely have to speak to Chaz Ebert. I guess, in speaking with you also, there was the film about Roger, Life Itself.
Life Itself.
Right.
Yes.
And so, how did this come about? I would imagine at first it might have been very difficult, but I don't know. And so I thought I'd ask, in your own words, what was that situation like and how did he come to be, in and why did you say yes?
So Roger never intended to have a movie made about him. And in fact, 2 or 3 people had approached him and he said, no, who wants to make a movie about a film critic? Then Steve James approached him, and Roger had a lot of respect for Steve James, who had done Hoop Dreams. And Hoop Dreams was one of the documentaries that both Roger and his partner Gene Siskel loved. So they both really liked Steve James. So when Steve James came and said, I'd like to make a film about you, and in fact, this is the group I'd like to put together, Martin Scorsese, and I am so sorry, I can't remember the names right now, but a really good group of filmmakers. And, Roger said, how can I say no to that? So this was in December of 2012. Shortly after that, I think Roger had a mishap and went into the hospital. And so the idea is that Steve James was going to be filming for maybe a few months, a year, I don't know how long. But as it turns out, he had to start filming Roger while he was still in the hospital. And Roger passed away that April. And anyway, I have to be honest with you. At the time, I did not want to have movie cameras around while he was sick and while he was in the hospital. And I wanted to wait until he got better. And now, I'm, of course, glad that the film is here because he never got better. He only got worse and then he passed away. it's kind of comforting. Sometimes I watch the film and it's comforting to see them up there on the screen and spend the 2 hours with them. Sometimes, even today, it's been 12 years, and sometimes it's hard. I start watching it and it becomes too much. But I'm glad that the film is out there. And Roger said, I said, why are you going to let them film you in the hospital? He said, because I wouldn't want a film made that I wouldn't want to see. If you're not going to be open and honest and transparent, why do it? So he said, I don't want a fluff piece.
That would definitely not be him. So one of the things I wanted to get back to your book because the focus is on empathy, compassion. Was there a film that you and Roger said, this film is the one that exemplifies these attributes that we want to spread among the world?
So not a particular film, but I'm going to tell you a film that he and I just secretly loved.
Ooh, we want to hear this. Yes.
Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump. We love that film so much because we thought that, talking about through the Tom Hanks character and Sally Fields as his mother and the things that he's trying to do as they take you from one decade to another, the Vietnam War and so many things. And he said, underneath it all is just kind of a decency and a goodness and a kindness. And so that's probably a surprise because we also love so many. I mean, one of my favorite films of all time is Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange. And that's nothing about kindness and compassion, but it's really tough. And some of the movies that I like are more indie movies like Breaking the Waves. But then something that's just simple kindness. Forrest Gump was that movie for us.
Well, I wanted to thank you so much for your time, and sharing it with us and telling us little secrets like now we know Forrest Gump. And I have been to Savannah, so I have known where the actual bench is there that they talked about in the film.
Sandra, may I ask you one thing really quickly? I want to ask you a question. What does it look like for you? What outlook do you see for women in film and TV at this time? What is your outlook on where we're going in the world and where we're heading and how likely are we to get there?
We're very likely to get there because I think underneath all of this, there's hope. And you have to have hope in order to continue to move forward. And I think one of the things, especially for our organization, is everyone is so supportive of other women. We also have men on our board. So men are supportive, such as Brandon, our producer here. He's on our podcast committee here. And without him, this interview would not have been possible. So I think the bottom line is hope, and everybody is supporting one another. And I think that will be the thing that carries us forward as we move into future media making.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, because I'm an optimist. An optimist and a lover of life and a lover of goodness. So thank you so much.
I want to thank you so much, Chaz, for joining us on Media Maker Spotlight. It's really been an honor to have you and to meet you. The book is It's Time to Give a FECK. It's time to give a FECK. To get the book, it's available wherever you buy your books.
Yes.
Thanks for listening to Media Maker Spotlight from Women in Film and Video. To learn more about WIF, visit F as in Frank, V as in Victor.org. This podcast is created by Sandra Abrams, Candace Block, Brandon Ferry, Tara Jabari, and Jerry Reinhardt, and edited by Michelle Kim and Inez Perez, with audio production and mix by Steve Lack Audio. Subscribe to continue learning from more amazing media makers. Please visit MediaMakersSpotlight.com for more information.